everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with Carl. I am your host, Carl Zoellner, one of the attorneys with Anderson Business Advisors. And today I want to talk a little bit about the use of a nominee trustee when we're using in a land trust is the most common place. So first piece we should talk about is, do you or should you, or is it appropriate that you would want to have a nominee a nominee trustee as part of your land trust? So the reason we use a nominee trustee is if you want an extra layer of anonymity, you can use a nominee trustee. So usually when we use the phrase nominee, we're talking about somebody who is not you so that you can remove your name from title of that property. So normally if you was just to set up a land trust without nominee, it would be, say, if it was mine, it would be Carl Zoellner as trustee of 123 Main, let's just call it 123 Main Street Trust. When I use a nominee, I can use an individual or even a business entity to be that nominee. So now I could let's call it 123 nominee, 123 Main Street LLC, that's the nominee. And this is going to be maybe a little bit confusing as I say it. But instead of Carl Zoellner as trustee of 123 Main Street Trust, it could now be 123 Main Street LLC as trustee of 123 Main Street Trust. So what it benefit is number one is my individual name's no longer on there. Number two is that becomes pretty complicated for somebody to figure out who actually owns that property. When you start talking about who do I need to take this property, if you get sued, who do I need to take this property from in order to get, say, a judgment for the plaintiff? So it creates some confusion there from the legal side. Also, it is good from the anonymity perspective, which we really like for our passive investments, or, as been known to say, our mailbox money. So for that type of protection, a nominee is a great idea, especially if you have a land trust. Now, when talking about whether to use an individual or a business entity in, most, if not all states, you have the ability to use either. Traditionally, and there's nothing wrong with this, a lot of our clients were using Clint Coons, one of the founding partners of Anderson Business Advisors, as their nominee trustee, which there's nothing wrong with. However, there is the ability to also use either that or use an LLC you set up as that nominee trustee. And my preference would be, for my clients I work with directly as well, I suggest and I like the use of the LLC as that nominee trustee because, in my mind, I like that additional level of control that I own and control the entity that's nominee. With Clint, it's still simple and pretty straightforward. You have everything you need to basically take Clint off the title and show he's not the owner or the trustee of that property. So there's not really a concern there, but it is nice to have control of the trustee entity, especially when you're dealing with outside third parties, because a lot of times if they need you to sign a document as trustee, they'd be trying to look to have Clint to sign that document. And then you'd have to produce what's referred to as the trustee's deed, which is basically just a new deed for the property that you would file to show that Clint is no longer the trustee and that you're the trustee and you can sign these documents. And then you sort of have to go through the whole rigmarole again if it comes up. Now, it doesn't come up all the time. So number one is don't worry that much about it, but it can be an inconvenience when you control the trustee, or say when it's a business and one of your business, it should just be a trustee LLC set up. When you control that trustee LLC, then you have signatory power on behalf of that trustee LLC. So there's nothing you really need to change. You just need to show whoever's requesting it that you have control, say you're the manager of that LLC, then you can sign on behalf of that trust as the trustee, or as the person that has control over that trustee entity. So quick summary. If you're using a land trust, a lot of times you're going to want to, or it is appropriate to have a nominee trustee. Number two is you usually have, if you want 2 to 3 options on who to use as that nominee trustee. You can use someone which is, I would say, the least favorable option because people have, unfortunately will pass away, disappear, move away, and it becomes inconvenient. The other thing is they really, if you do use an individual, you really should still have a trustee's deed. So in case something does happen, you have something in your hands that say, nope, I'm now the trustee. Number two, your option would be to use, say, if you're working with Anderson Clint Coons as your nominee trustee, which is another good option. And we provide that documentation to facilitate that transfer if for some reason you needed it. So kind of tidies up that loose end. Number three, in my preference, would be the LLC that is actually going to serve as trustee of that land trust. There's no compensation generated to that trustee. It's just a name to go on title. And I like that option because you literally hold the strings to everything. You have the ability to sign on behalf of that trustee LLC as manager of that trustee LLC. So it makes life a little bit easier, and it gives you an additional modicum of control so that it's easier to work with outside third parties. So with that being said, as always, please keep taking advantage of all of our free content that's out there. Really, if you have, like I mentioned in pretty much all my videos, if you haven't been to one of our classes lately, you should. And even if it's just a refresher, if you're new or just happen to stumble upon this video, it's a pleasure to meet you. And we'd really like you to understand and get to know Anderson Business Advisors. We're a premium education company, and we really value making sure our clients are educated so they can make educated decisions. So until next time, it's been great chatting with you all as always, and we will catch you on the next Coffee with Carl. Thanks, everybody.